Arcadia Scene 6 takes place directly after the shooting in the garden, which in fact turns out to have been simply a very pathetic shooting of rabbits. So there's a pathetic moment in the play. For me, Scene 6 is one of my absolute most favourite parts of the play, not perhaps in terms of great artistry, but in terms of the sparkle in the dialogue and the Wildean plays on words that take place. So we get the exchange, first of all, between Septimus and Jellyby, which is on a very Jeeves and Wooster kind of level. If you're familiar with Jeeves and Wooster from P.G. Wodehouse, seeing the Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie TV adaptations, with the scandal of Byron's early departure and Captain Bryce and Mr. and Mrs. Chater's early departure as well. Septimus appears to have been out of the loop. We get the nice cultural reference to the tip. So Septimus tips Jellyby because Byron didn't. And then Jellyby is cut off mid confidential exchange by Lady Croom, who appears, sweeps all before her, and creates a very interesting dramatic device where she brings in this, or she brings these envelopes in first of all, and envelopes and letters and texts are very important in Arcadia, and as an audience we're sitting there wondering, well, hang on a minute, what is in these letters? And we rely on Lady Croom's description of them, and then Septimus's defence of what he's written. That there are misunderstandings here. I think a good topic for this, if you were looking at an extract from this scene, would be confusion or misunderstandings, and indeed in several other scenes. So I think the comment by Lady Croom, what do you mean by writing to her of rice pudding when she has just suffered the shock of violent death in our midst? Whose death? Septimus is either being ingenuous, either pretending he doesn't understand what Lady Croom's talking about, or he genuinely is confused, as we might be at the audience. Hang on a minute, violent death. We're thinking about this duel, and we're thinking, oh, has someone died in the duel? And when she says your death, of course, he's thinking, oh no one did die. So Septimus was actually terrified enough, or at least serious enough to think, actually, I could die in this duel, and I'm expressing my love for Lady Croom, a very wise thing to do, to express his love for Lady Croom, and also his tutory wisdoms and maxims and perhaps encouragements to Thomasina to continue to push the boundaries of knowledge, with a reference to rice pudding, which we assume is referring to chaos, and you can't unstir the rice pudding, you can't unstir the jam out of the rice pudding. So that is a reference to entropy, to the fact that heat is lost and you can't find that heat again, and that order goes to disorder, the second law of thermodynamics. And then you get the humorous phrase where Lady Croom says, have no doubt which is the more intolerable to me, one envelope full of rice pudding, the other the most insolent familiarities regarding several parts of my body. We are left to wonder what the familiarities are. And the envelope full of rice pudding, of course, is a pun or a misleading indication. The envelope itself is not full of rice pudding, but the talk is of rice pudding. So that's quite humorous. Then we get the whole exchange about Byron and Chater and Septimus's relationship with Byron. This is the most explicit passage on his friendship and how close it is. He does distance himself from Byron in order to gain plaudits, in order to gain favour with Lady Croom, and literally sexual favours. When Lady Croom says, you have no secrets left, Mr. Hodge, we do wonder what secrets are being divulged, but again, we don't get them. There are a lot of layers that aren't really teased out in this scene. One of the reasons it's one of my favourite scenes is because it ends on this this rendezvous, which is clearly going to be a sexual rendezvous between Lady Croom and Septimus. He's going to her room. He was quite surprised to find that she had gone to his room earlier in the scene. In my room, you were looked for by her ladyship. In my room, says Jellybay. Or he doesn't confirm it, but that's what Septimus assumes or questions. The best line in the scene, probably, aside from the humorous lines, is it is a defect of God's humour that he directs our hearts everywhere, but to those who have a right to them. And this is a touchstone, this is a kind of plumb line, really, for all the relationships in the play. None of the love relationships work, and it's as if Stoppard is setting out his stall here and saying, look, love never works, and it's actually almost a scientific principle that love never works. And we can compare Lady Croom's statement with Chloe's at the very start of scene 7, of course not far away in terms of the performance, where she says it's all because of sex. The only thing going wrong is people fancying people who aren't supposed to be in that part of the plan. It's a very modern take on a deterministic universe, a universe that's set in motion by someone who's designed it all. And what Stoppard's suggesting here is that even if God exists, things aren't going in the way that he wanted them to go. And so Lady Croom refers to God there. She refers to God elsewhere in the play as well. If you look in scene 7 again, we get the reference to Hobbes and Leviathan, where Thomasina despises geometry, she says, and Septimus cites Hobbes, who says geometry is the only science God has been pleased to bestow on mankind. And what does he mean by it? Mr. Hobbes or God? Again, confusion, that grammatical ambiguity that's deliberately pointed up by Stoppard in order to amuse. And Lady Croom says, I'm sure I do not know what either means by it. She puts Hobbes and God on the same level. She brings God down to a very low level, as only Lady Croom can do, modelled, of course, on Lady Bracknell. We get the so we get that statement, it's a defect of God's humour, which suggests that God is somehow imperfect, which of course is theologically very very odd ground, not very Christian view, but Lady Bracknell's taken that humorous Wildian take on God there. It's important to notice she comments to Septimus that she's been betrayed before the pen is even dipped, which is a double entendre, which shows that Septimus and Lady Croom have not slept together. At the end of this scene, we are to assume, I think, in the same way that we are to assume the opposite at the end of scene 7, we are to assume that Septimus and Lady Croom do sleep together. And in fact, I think it's fair to assume that they have an ongoing liaison for some time. 3 years elapse before the Regency scenes in scene 7 begin, and there's a very different feel to the lessons. We get Lord Augustus, 15 years old, bursts through the non-music room door, page 102, and Thomasina, 16 and furious, chasing after him, embarrassed because she has been spilling her secrets out to Augustus and saying now she's been kissing Septimus, and Septimus is going to kiss her. Whether she says she fancies Septimus or not, we don't know. Maybe she does. But we get that clear sense of moving on in the characters. And Septimus himself is sitting there with a decanter and a glass. He comes through with a decanter of wine, and he's well supplied with wine now, and this suggests that he's gone up in his lady's favour. It is, of course, important to notice that situation is sizzling out, or fizzling out, I should say. Their relationship has obviously become less interesting to Lady Croom, and she now has Count Zielinski, and she's conscious that she's making Septimus jealous, and I think she's getting some mileage out of it in scene 7. Hence, Septimus says, your ladyship's approval is my constant object. So just to come back to scene 6, I think it's a fabulous scene. The other interesting dramatic device is the infusion that Lady Croom brings through. It's going to create some interest for the audience. It creates a bit of stage business. You've got this elaborate affair, pewter tray. You've got a flame burning. You've got a spirit lamp. Why does Lady Croom have this infusion? Does it suggest this is very in the sense of women being the weaker sex, having particular health problems or health issues? It suggests her age. It suggests a slight whimsical behaviour about her. Because she's aristocracy, she can do what she likes. If she wants to have an infusion, she'll have an infusion. If the butler has to spend half an hour getting it ready, he has to spend half an hour getting it ready. She sends Jellyby out, and she says she will do it. So notice there's that sense of feminist, I'm going to do it, feminist power, girl power. And then, of course, Septimus pours the tea. So we've got that sense of him moving into that closer relationship with Lady Croom. And then the dramatic importance. Why did Stoppard have this infusion in here? Possibly just in order to create a plausible flame with which Septimus could burn the letter from Byron, which has never been read. And of course, Bernard gives us the text of that letter in his lecture in scene 5. There is a platonic letter which confirms everything, lost but ineradicable. My dear Hodge, here I am in Albania, and you're the only person in the whole world who knows why. Poor C, I never wished him any harm, except in the Piccadilly, of course. It was the woman who bade me eat, dear Hodge. What a tragic business, but thank God it ended well for poetry. Yours ever be, P.S. Burn this. Of course, Bernard's version of the letter is not the version of the letter that Septimus would have received, because we know that Chaytor did not die in the duel, and that was not the reason that Byron fled. We're not sure that that was the reason that Byron left England, although he left Sydney Park because he was found in a compromising position with Mrs. Chaytor. That's fairly clear. So there is an irony which Stoppard is pointing out. How do we know that the evidence that we have in our hand is the only evidence? It could be that as historians, as researchers, there are pieces of evidence which were forever lost, which actually would have contradicted all the evidence that has survived. We never have a complete picture of what happened in history, and I think Stoppard plays this very well with the fact that he keeps on stopping the play just before key events, so we never quite know how it fell out. We never quite know how that duel fell out and what happened there. We never quite find out what happened to Thomasina after she finished the dance with Septimus and went up to her room. Did Septimus come up to her room and see her, even though he said he wouldn't? Did she die alone? Did Septimus try to save her? Did he feel guilty? He actually lit the candlestick. Is that Stoppard saying that they had sex? Is that a kind of Freudian reference to intercourse? So Stoppard is playing around, and I think it's important as well that Lady Croom, Septimus, burns the 2 letters that he wrote, so we never get to read those either, the one to Lady Croom or the one to Thomasina. Who knows what secrets those hid? We shall never know. We are left at the end of the play with lots of questions, but with a wonderful sense that something really did happen. And what was it that happened? And scene 6 contributes to that mystery by the burning of the letters. Don't forget those when you write your essays.